Clair-Obscur Expedition 33 is a new RPG that released earlier this year. It takes place within a world where the lifespan of every human inhabitant is limited from birth. Every year, the Paintress lowers the number marked on the monolith by 1. And every time this happens, everyone whose age is the same as that number or above it is gomased, which means that their body disappears into flower petals. Effectively, they die. Because of this yearly event, each year Lumiere sends out an expedition towards the main continent in the hope of defeating the Paintress and putting an end to the Gomas. The game's story follows one of these expeditions, namely Expedition 33. Yet throughout this expedition, we learn more and more about the background behind the Gomas, the actors involved, the reasons it is even happening. As it turns out, the world is more complex than originally shown. And all of the enemies have layers of depth and meaning that, as the expeditioners first encounter them, are not immediately apparent. And for this video I will be analyzing the hidden complexities of one of these specific enemy types, namely the Axon bosses. But first a warning, this video contains spoilers for the full plot of Clair-Obscur. If you do not want to be spoiled, then do not continue watching this video. Besides that, I have also recently opened a Patreon in order to fund my videos, so if you have been enjoying my videos, then please consider looking at it. You can see the rewards for subscribing on the screen right now. And with that said, let's proceed to the video. The 4 Axons are first introduced following Verso's failed attempt at reaching the Paintress through entering the manor in Haute Lumiere. The Axons offer an alternative means of breaking through the chroma barrier that surrounds the monolith, and thus of reaching the Paintress. Verso says that the Axons possess hearts of pure chroma, and by slaying 2 of them and then harvesting this concentrated chroma, the curator would obtain sufficient chroma to create a weapon capable of piercing the barrier. It is with this function that the Axons are first introduced as quest objectives from a video game. They are boss enemies whose loot allows progress, and thus they have to be defeated in order to unlock the final level. That the first Axon that the player encounters has been killed in the past already further establishes this point, at least within the player's mind. The Axons exist only to be defeated. This holds completely true on the level of gameplay. But story-wise, the first sign that there is more to the Axons than meets the eye occurs after the defeat of Visages. Here, Verso wonders whether Visages was Verso.
Wasn't it? Renoir.
And later, upon entering Sirene's palace, Mael wonders multiple times why the Axon's dancing style feels so familiar to her. As the player proceeds to find out by the end of the game, each of the 4 Axons was created by Renoir de Sandre during his imprisonment underneath the monolith. And during the full epilogue following Act 2, the player can encounter paintings of 3 of the Axons, the Hall, Sirene and Visages inside of Renoir's atelier. Like all great works of art, the Axons reflect the beliefs and worldview of their creator. For Renoir, this means imbuing the creations with layers of meaning and symbolism. In one of the unknown journal entries, Renoir explains his passion for art as being something that gives him control. The creation of an artwork, to Renoir, gives the artist the perception of control, the perception of being able to take the chaos of reality and then transform it into something coherent, something that shows the world as the artist thinks it should be, rather than how it actually is. Meanwhile, the subject matter is the thing that matters most to him, namely, his family. In the form of the fading man in Haute Lumière, Renoir tells the expedition that he paints in order to remember their face. At the start of the Reacher quest, Maëlle further expands on her father's attitude towards art.
Papa and his parables.
Parables?
He never paints just to paint. Everything has to have layers and layers of meaning and purpose. Everything's a lesson.
Renoir's craft is further described as being a parable, which are stories meant to illustrate, through a narrative, a moral or spiritual lesson. A well-known example of this is the parable of the Good Samaritan, which emphasizes through the character of the Samaritan the importance of taking care of those in need, as well as how deeds outweigh beliefs. Renoir's Axons are parables about his wife and children, meant to teach them about their lives and how to improve them, yet without overtly telling them. As parables, the Axons are both representation and lesson. Yet also, like all good art, Renoir's Axons embody the most important principle in storytelling, namely that of show, don't tell. Although parables exist to teach the reader a lesson, it is up to the reader to decipher this lesson. Likewise, the Axons don't have their full meaning blatantly explained to Expedition 33, nor to the player. And so, in this video, I will set out to explain the meaning and lesson contained within each of Clair-Obscur's 4 Axons, starting with the first one that the expedition encounters. The Hall is the first of the 4 Axons that Expedition 33 meets. They find its corpse in the middle of Haute Lumière, its head pierced by a sword of light. The Hall is a giant humanoid carrying an entire city on its back. The symbolic meaning of it is immediately apparent. Its function and pose reminds of the Greek titan Atlas, who was punished by Zeus to eternally carry the heavens on his shoulders. The weight of the heavens is so great that, were Atlas to let go of it, the earth would be crushed underneath it. Yet the weight also immobilizes him in place. As such, Atlas is forever constrained to his solitary job. It is for this reason that Atlas became the symbol of the load bearer, the one who maintains a structure's stability. Lest the Atlas be present, the structure shall collapse. Such is the common portrayal of the Atlas as a figure in popular media, like in the novel Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. The Hall, however, carries not the heavens or the future of a country, a city which, upon closer inspection, appears not simply to be constructed upon the Hall's back. Rather, it is sprouting out of its head, a weight emerging from its own brain. The weight the Hall carries is both embodied and self-inflicted. But the Hall not only imitates the posture of Atlas, but also its symbolic meaning. To make sense of its symbolic meaning, however, we first need to look at who it represents. The Hall is based upon the Desandres family's oldest child, Clea Desandre. She is an artistic prodigy on par with or even exceeding her mother, who is the head of the real world's Paintress Council, just to give an idea of how talented Clea is. We learn this from Maëlle. Only Clea is skilled enough to paint over Aline's creations. Clea is also the one who created the majority of the nephrons, thereby enabling Renoir to wage a war of nutrition through the Gommas. Clea is poised to inherit her mother's position at the Paintress Council, having to assume the role of both the eldest child and of Paintress par excellence. Clea received enormous amounts of external and internal pressure, particularly from her parents. We glimpse a little of this through the young boy's story at the Stone Wave Cliffs. He narrates how he and Clea used to spend all of their time together playing and creating inside of the canvas, only for Clair to eventually outgrow this activity. Instead, the young boy tells, Clair seems to have found more important things, more important friends, to occupy her time with. So Clair abandoned the canvas, forced to grow up quickly and live up to her potential. The eldest child typically receives the brunt of the parents' expectations. After all, as the first one to reach adulthood, they represent the future of the family. We see this in Clair as well, both in the past, when she as a child had to grow up faster, but also in the present, following the attack of the Writers' Council on the family, and the parents' consequent war for supremacy over the canvas. The act of taking revenge upon the writers, and thus safeguarding the future security of the painters and of her family, fell entirely on her shoulders. As Renoir admits, Clair has been forced into fighting a solitary war. Despite all of the drama and grief that her family has been caught up in, life outside of the family and outside of the canvas continues undeterred, even uncaringly. And Clair thus had to be equally uncaring towards the canvas and towards her family, in order to protect her family. In the form of the fading woman on the forgotten battlefield, Clair warns Maël of getting too involved in their parents' matters. Clair personally only got involved as much as was necessary to get her father out of the canvas sooner. Of course, this is not to say that Clair was unaffected by Verso's death, nor that she felt no compassion towards her family members. And yet, as the only descendant with enough fortitude to keep on living, she became the family's atlas, carrying alone the responsibility of keeping her family afloat. Although all of these are external factors, we also learn about an internal burden that Clair carries with her. When we first meet the fading man, we learn the following about Clair. When she was young, she would get sad thinking about mortality. But when I asked her about her sadness, her answer surprised me. She wasn't scared of death itself. She was scared because there are more works of art than she would ever be able to see in her lifetime. So many fables from around the world that she would never be able to collect, to bring to life in her workshop. All the beauty in the world she would never get to experience. That saddened her. This conversation teaches us that Clair is a profoundly existentialist thinker and has been one since she was very young. It is not typical for young children to contemplate death. Especially Clair's case is abnormal. It was not her own existence ending that bothered her, but instead that an ending puts a limit upon one's life. The German philosopher Martin Heidegger's description of death as the absolute impossibility of further possibility characterizes Clair's mindset well. Once death occurs, everything that once was possible now no longer is possible. This brings with it the number of possibilities that one can realize while alive is limited. In Clair's case, her death represents the absolute impossibility of collecting every fable and every folktale from around the world. It was Clair's dream to collect all of these and bring them to life within her own paintings. Yet the number of tales is so numerous that no human lifespan could ever be long enough to accomplish that. Yet the failure to collect them, to give them new life, means to doom them to potential death. The only way to prevent folktales from dying out is to remember them, to commemorate them, to retell them. To keep the tales alive, Clair has to carry the burden of their memory, a quest forever incomplete because of Clair's own limits as a living being. Mortality is what defines Clair as a character. It is interwoven with every burden she has been assigned. Her childhood has died, her family structure collapsed due to Verso's death, and her own death puts pressure on every second of time she spends. This is the weight placed upon Clair's shoulders, the knowledge that death will come for all, and that the living have the responsibility to prevent future death from taking place. During Verso's funeral, at the end of the game, Clair leaves early, seemingly annoyed by what she considers to be a waste of time. And perhaps this is a lesson that Renoir sought to teach Clair through the horror, that too many burdens will eventually crush you, no matter how resilient one is. Every atlas has a limit, yet as perfectionist as Clair is, she did not take kindly to this lesson. The horror is the only Axon already killed before the events of the main story, at the indirect hands of Clair. As such, the horror does not partake in any of the game's narrative, just like Clair herself is mostly absent. Of the two Axons fought during the main story, Visages is the one Verso recommends to fight first. It can be found on the island of the same name, The rocks of it are covered in masks, evoking all manner of emotions. The island is segmented into 3 areas, each ruled by a particular emotion, as well as a boss chamber. During the boss fight against Visages, it also uses masks representing different emotions for its attacks. And in the second phase, where the player fights the Mask Keeper, the masks representing sadness, happiness and anger inflict status effects representing their respective emotions. When you talk to the Fading Man in Visages, he explains that this place is part of Verso's story. It's a story about masks and concealment. After defeating Visages' first phase, it is revealed that this was not the real Axon. Instead, the Mask Keeper told a lie. It wore the mask of the Axon's servant, when in reality it itself was the Axon. When called out over its lie, the Mask Keeper claims that everyone needs a mask, with its importance lying in how the mask is worn. It then reiterates this after the boss fight, exclaiming that we all need masks. Visages uses masks as tools of deception. Its moniker is "He who guards the truth through lies," which it employs to mask its own identity. It illuminates this point more ahead of its boss fight.
People want so badly to know what's behind the mask. Front, back, recto, verso. Great art is both window and mirror. Whether it's your mask or theirs.
The most important idea here is that art is both window and mirror. One medium reflects light, while the other allows light to pass through. Great art then shows both front and back of the surface. It informs about the artist and about the watcher. This claim echoes what Renoir wrote about in one of his journals about the real Verso.
Art can be a window and art can be a mirror. And great art is both. Son, you'll never be a true artist if there's always a mask between you and the viewer, especially when the viewer is you.
As the creator of Visages, Renoir imbued the Axon with this idea. Yet Renoir and the Mask Keeper came to different conclusions following that same idea. Renoir was warning his son that to wear a mask severs the window from the mirror, especially when the artist is the viewer. With that, Renoir means that, were Verso to gaze upon his own paintings, he would learn only about his mask, but nothing about the real Verso. To the Mask Keeper, however, great art does not show the true self, but instead it shows the mask worn by its producer. It teaches you about your own mask, about the artist's mask. To Renoir, art reveals the authentic self, whereas to Visages, it exposes a universe of lies. This second aesthetic is the same kind of universe that Verso existed in, both the real and the painted Verso. The real Verso was a talented painter, yet his true passion was music. We see this in his character interactions with Lune, which revolve around the theme of not letting your parents define who you are. It ends with them creating music together. And more importantly, Expedition 33 encounters a large version of the young boy playing piano in Lumiere's auditorium. Verso's true passion was with music, but instead, to please his parents, he wore the mask of a painter. It was not that his canvas did not represent him, rather, it was the very art form itself. Painting was inadequate for expressing Verso's full self, so instead he expressed a masked self. It contained the emotions he was expected to feel towards painting, rather than his actual feelings about it. Painted Verso likewise wore a mask throughout the entire campaign. The very first thing he tells Expedition 33 is a combination of lies and half-truths, and he keeps this up throughout most of the game, never revealing his true goal and always covering up the complete truth with lies. For more details on this matter, you can look up the video called Verso, The Mercy of Cruelty by the channel Fatberet, who did a deeper dive into the scope of Verso's deceptions. But in short, he kept the true origin of the commas hidden in order so that the expeditioners would defeat the wrong enemy, and thus guaranteeing the end of the world. and when called out on this by Lune, Verso continues lying, saying he was simply trying to save his mother. Just like his real-world counterpart, Painted Verso hid the truth through lies, both the fact of the situation and by covering up his nihilistic despair with a jovial demeanor. Only at the end of the game do we discover how badly Verso wishes to die. Only then does Verso get the chance to be completely honest. Visages was created only in the likeness of the real Verso. Renoir, while trapped underneath the monolith, didn't know yet of the painted Verso while he was creating the Axons. Regardless, Visages acts as an allegory for both Verso and Painted Verso. Both Versos masked the truth, and they both wore their mask until the very end. As an allegory, Renoir wanted to teach his son not to wear masks, not to place a layer between himself and the viewer, but instead to be authentic. Yet the real Verso died with his mask still in place, while Painted Verso wore his mask until the very end as well, and he gained his victory precisely because of that mask. The message behind Visages was to stop wearing masks, to make Verso identify with himself, rather than with a fake self. Visages is defeated by Ciel, who realizes this, and then rips off the mask, while declaring that the mask is not another self, but the true self. However, Renoir's lesson was about how to live life, and how to create great art. Painted Verso decided neither of these. He sought to end his life, to destroy the canvas. As such, the mask could not leave his face. From the moment he enters the stage, he wears that same mask. The second Axon that Expedition 33 seeks to defeat, and the third one overall, is Sirene, also known as She Who Plays with Wonder. How she plays with wonder is shown almost immediately upon entering the Colosseum. The minds of the expedition members are filled with a fake sense of joy and desire. This desire is crystallized further right before the Sirene boss fight, during which visions of the loved ones of the various party members are created. Lune sees her parents, Ciel her husband and her son, Mal sees Gustav, and Monaco faces Noko. Only Verso, whose primary desire is to erase the canvas, finds no memories of loved ones. In gameplay also, we find Sirene playing with wonder. The puppets it controls can inflict the charm status effect upon the expedition members, a status effect that is unique to this area. Charm affects one expedition member and it makes them attack a random ally or themselves if none are available, in place of the normal attack for that turn. In both story and in gameplay, Sirene plays with wonder through the power of seduction. This seduction then leads to harmful consequences. You attack your allies, you become distracted from your goal, or even, as Monaco warns about, it leads to past expeditioners throwing themselves off the cliffs and towards their death. This is the same effect as the siren song talked about in folktales and the myths from all around the world. The most well-known version in the West is the Sirens from Homer's Odyssey. In it, the sirens seduce sailors and seafarers with their beautiful singing, tempting any male who hears it into jumping overboard. The sirens of the Odyssey, like Sirene, use humanity's natural attraction towards the beautiful as weapons of war. The myth serves as a warning that beauty can be dangerous, and thus that one should not become consumed by it, lest it cost them their life. The Fading Man also comments on this danger, particularly in a reference to his own captivation. Renoir's comments here show the difficulty of truly coming to know someone. Sometimes this is because of the masks they wear, but at other times, beauty enthralls, preventing people from seeing the complete picture. This is the case for the woman that Sirene was based on, Renoir's wife, Aline de Sandre. Following the death of their son Verso, Aline became unable to process her grief, rather than accept the real world as it now indisputably was, meaning without Verso. She fled into Verso's canvas, which housed the final remnants of Verso's soul. There, she painted a new family for herself, comprised of her husband, her daughters, and most importantly, painted Verso. She pretended that this was her real family, that the painted Verso was the real Verso. like a sailor engrossed by the song of the siren, and consequently unable to spot the danger he was seduced into. So Aline was too engrossed in a make-believe world with a make-believe family to realize that she was destroying herself. Prolonged inhabitation of a canvas world slowly eats away at both your mental state and your body. At the close of Act 2, when Expedition 33 finds the Paintress at the top of the monolith, Aline's mind is unstable. She fails to discern between her own and Renoir's creations, believing the painted Verso to be one of Renoir's creations. And worse, she accuses Mel of the self-same, despite Mel being her very real daughter. Following the final boss fight against Renoir, the expedition is once again shown by Renoir the effects that the canvas world has on Aline's health. She is viscerally in pain, dazed and stumbling around the atelier. Even if the canvas's effects are not instantaneous, it is clear that she is slowly dying. The lesson taught by Sirene is that beauty, as a fanciful, seemingly perfect ideal, is not reality. One needs to accept the real world as both beautiful and ugly. To continue to deny the setbacks and tragedies of the real world is to construct a fantastical delusion, as Aline did within Verso's canvas. A delusion that destroys both herself and her family. Renoir expresses his frustration with his wife thusly.
But how? With someone who refuses to talk. We don't even share the bonds of grief anymore. She walks her path, and I walk mine. I don't exist to her. None of us do. She's left us all behind to drown by ourselves so that she can drown alone.
The fourth and final Axon is called the Reacher. It is found in the area of the same name, a mountainous location of which the sky is pierced by enormous wooden structures built by the area's inhabiting Nephrons. And yet, the expedition does not get to see the actual Axon upon entering the area, but only the poles it carries in its hands. To arrive at the Axon, the expedition needs to conduct a lengthy ascent. The structures they climb through are inhabited by the area's Nephrons, the Orphelins, which is the French word for orphan. These Orphelins are not exactly kind to each other. Instead, they appear to be motivated by petty jealousy. Expedition 33 observes these Orphelins killing each other by pushing each other off the structure. Their motivations for building up towards the Reacher, likewise, is to pull down the Reacher towards the earth. This makes for a large contrast with the Nephrons in Visages and Sirene. There, the Nephrons were protectors of the Axons, whereas the Nephrons in the Reacher are hostile towards theirs. These Nephrons, like the Axons themselves, were all created by Renoir, which means that their behavior contributes towards the theme. They must be part of the Axons parable, and thus they have to be imbued with purpose. It becomes clear from Renoir's final journal entry what this Axons theme is. This entry reads as follows.
People come and people go. The one who will always be there for you is you. Little one, there's more to life if you can just see how big the sky truly is. Reach out your hand and it's yours.
The core theme of the Reacher is that of ascent. The entire area is a constant ascent, with the party continuously climbing higher and higher into the mountains in order to, reach the Reacher. The Nephrons have also constructed their civilization upwards in order to pull the Reacher down to their level. This verticality is meant to be understood not only literally, but also metaphorically, as part of the parable. Typically, the sky is a symbol for untapped potential, something that is free to claim. This is a teleological function that creations like skyscrapers, airplanes, and spacecrafts are often imagined to complete. namely the realization of its untapped potential promised by the heavens. By physically taking up the space of that implied potential, the Reacher embodies this very same idea. By making its entire area and its body so vertically designed, the physical act of vertical movement represents becoming the best person you can be, despite the effort it requires, and despite the enemies who are pulling you down. And this is what enables it to be a lesson for Alicia. Although Aline is responsible for all of the events taking place within Verso's canvas, the game's core inciting incident, the fire that burned down the Desandra family's mansion and consequently took Verso's life, was Alicia's fault. Being still young and naive, Alicia was tricked by the Writers Guild into letting them enter the Desandra manor. Although the exact details are unknown, Alicia's trust indirectly led to Verso's demise. Since that moment, Alicia has lived like a ghost. She can no longer speak, as she keeps herself secluded within her own room. Claire's mocking remark during the prelude suggests as much, and during the climax of the game, Alicia as Mel likewise argues to her father that she has no life left to live outside of the canvas, that the fire took her future from her and turned her into a damaged, hollow shell of a human. Only inside of the canvas does she consider her life to be worth living. The painted Alicia, painted by Aline with the scars from the fire still present, further corroborates this. In her letter to Mael, she describes her as Alicia as she was meant to be, and when during Act 1 of the game, painted Alicia visits Expedition 33's camp, she likewise comments on how Mael gets to exist without the memories of her sin.
I envy them. Those who can't see, those who know not that they are not, and those who live, blithe and free, sins forgotten, and thus absolved, a fresh dawn in their playground, while we live in shadows, swimming in ink. We are but a fragile dream, a singular weed, resisting, ever resisting, that iron dirt, that eternal law. Those who can't see, those who know not that they are not. Do you know? We are fellows, those who know not that they are not.
And at the beginning of Act 3, Mael finally comes to learn the sins she had forgotten and remembers her name to be Alicia. And still, she refuses to recognize this. While speaking with the painted Verso, she acknowledges that he is not a real Verso, yet she maintains that her true identity is Mael and not Alicia.
Alicia.
Actually, I prefer Mael.
I think I do too. But I'm not really Verso, and you're not really Mael, are you?
You're not Verso, no. You look and sound just like him, but you're you. I'm still Mael, though.
Like the Orphalin Nephrons walking to pull the Reacher down again, so the Writers Guild sought to destroy Mael's future. And they appear to have succeeded. The final act of the game revolves around Mael's refusal of the return, the refusal to implement an apotheosis. Alicia's ascent into the heavens has been thwarted successfully, and she now thinks it is impossible for her to ever rise again. Upon entering the Reacher, she mentions that she has vertigo, a nauseating feeling that typically emerges from looking downwards from great heights. Rather than attempt to climb to the top and kneel, Alicia instead constructs her Mael persona to inhabit a make-believe universe, one where no one exists to prevent her rise, since as a paintress, she rules as a god over this world. Although unlike her mother, she does not seek to live with her family in this world. Instead, like her name, she has entirely replaced her family. As we learn at the end of the Reacher quest, the Axon's true form is not this towering behemoth. Instead, it is a broken, little humanoid girl sitting inside, controlling the main body. It resembles the real-world Alicia, with its physical impairments, its seeming inability to move on its own. And still, the Reacher is a parable, containing something to be taught. Although the Reacher's real body is as damaged as it is, this has not prevented its ascent. Rather than invalidate its possession of the heavens by its external body, it proves that, no matter how damaged it is, its potential has not disappeared. The Reacher, like Alicia, possesses enormous potential, and despite its scars, it is able to be free. Its place within the heavens has not yet been taken away from it by the Orphalins, and so Alicia can also still claim her place, despite her burned skin and despite her destroyed vocal cords. Her ability to paint remains, and that is enough.
Go, claim your piece of sky.
And yet, Alicia maintains that she is Mael. Her duel with, consequent commas of, painted Alicia is a form of overcoming, yet it is not the overcoming which Renoir had hoped to teach with the Reacher. Alicia overcame her past by erasing it in favor of a new self as Mael, rather than to return to her life in the real world. Her overcoming was not a bringing together of worlds, an apotheosis, but instead a separating of two worlds. And so, Alicia's story was that of the fallen heroine. It was an aborted hero's journey. Through this individual analysis of each of the 4 Axons, we find that all of them have been imbued with a particular meaning. They were tailor-made for each of Renoir's family members to reflect both their potential peak and their shortcomings to be overcome. For Clair, it is a self-destructive drive towards the perfect. For Verso, it was his inability to act authentically. For Aline, it was her infatuation with the fantastical. And finally, for Alicia, it was her belief in a future condemned to fail. In one way or another, the locations, behaviors, and fights against these Axons reflect each of their individual flaws, as well as the potential ability to overcome those flaws. And yet, none of these Axons actually achieved their goal. Ironically, it is through his Axons that Renoir's own core character flaw is exposed, namely his desire to control his family, to correct their flaws, and all of this is proven futile. Clair has the Hauler destroyed out of resentment for the likeness created of her, whereas the other 3 Axons remain stationary to their area. At large, their presence had no impact on his family members, least of all his wife, who during the final boss fight engages in a head-on combat with Sirene. Although Renoir's actions were motivated by love, he went about this through attempting to control Aline and later Alicia, which did nothing except to potentially further alienate his loved ones from him. Thus, the fracture within the Descendere family was widened. And in this respect, the painted and the real Renoir are not so unlike each other as Alicia claims them to be.
If saving you means losing you, then so be it.
The final appearance of the Axons is when Renoir calls upon them during the game's final boss fight, where all of the 4 Axons either assist him or attack the party in his place. His invocation of them is his final plea to his family to listen to him and to take his advice, in order that the family can return to harmony. And despite Renoir's pleading, his family does not listen. The ultimate function of the Axons, then, is not that of redemptive angels, of helpful parables that redeem the world and its inhabitants. They do not represent an apotheosis, nor atonement with the Father is achieved. Instead, they mark the impossibility of controlling grief. The tragedy of Verso's death had a profound emotional impact on every member of the Dusandre family, whereas the ensuing conflict between Aline and Renoir likewise transformed painted Verso's entire way of being. Although the lessons that the Axons represent are ideal outcomes, their solutions are merely theoretical in nature. Renoir has failed to account for the emotional states of his daughters and his wife. A direct appeal to the intellect cannot succeed, not when grief is in play. Finally then, the Axons are a macrocosm of the conflict that dominates the whole game, as well as a microcosm of Clair-Obscur's real rupture. It shows the misalignment between family members who, despite sharing their grief, cannot reconcile that grief, and where reason and harmony are not possible, but the present can also not be maintained, only violence can follow. And so, we find that the war between the Paintress and the Curator has stretched out for over 67 years. Thanks a lot for watching this video to the end, and also a special thank you for all of my Patreon supporters, whose names you can see on screen right now. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and commenting on it, and perhaps even subscribing. And with that said, have a great day, and hopefully I see you in the next video.